Hey guys, my name is Francisco Hernandez, and today I'm doing another episode in my Building the Shot series, which is a series that I haven't made a video of in a long time. So if you're not familiar with the series, that's totally fine. I basically break down how I took one photo from a photo shoot that I really liked. So in this case, in this video, it's going to be this photo on the screen here of Dabani that I took last week using the new Flashpoint X100. In this series, I not only show you guys the photos that led up to that final image, but also explain a little bit about the posing, the gear, and the thought process. So that's exactly what I'm about to do. I'm going to break down the gear first, and then I'm going to show you guys the raw files and the thought process that was happening as I took those photos. The camera that I used was the Sony a7R III, which I've been using since it came out really, and I'm actually going to upgrade this year to the a7 IV, so I'm looking forward to that. And the lens that I use is the Sigma Art 35 f1.2, and if you guys have followed me in the past, maybe again another 6 to 8 months, you would know that I've been working with the lens company Viltrox lately, and they are actually making their own version of that lens soon, so I'm really looking forward to that. And actually it's going to be more affordable than the Sigma Art version, so that's going to be cool. Like I said earlier in the video, the lighting that I used was the brand new Flashpoint X100, which is a 100 watt speed light. It was really exciting to try it out because I think it's the first of its kind. I don't think there's another 100 watt speed light out there. So a review is actually coming on my channel soon, hopefully in the next couple of days. So stay tuned for that. The modifier that I used for this photo shoot was this one right here by a company called SMDV. And this one right here is their 20-inch beauty dish that folds down really nice and flat. And it opens very, very quickly. So I wanted to show you guys exactly how quick it opens. So all you have to do is bring that front part up and then it snaps into place, and now you can just place a speed light or strobe that has a magnetic ring on the front part of it and attach it to this magnetic ring right here. Even though this light right here is the Flashpoint Zoom Lion X Pro, it's the exact same form factor as the new X100, which I don't have on me. I have it in my room. So I wanted to show you guys how the X100 attached to this modifier. And all you have to do again is it has a magnetic ring in front of it, and all I have to do is attach it and it snaps on, and there's actually an extra little bit of security. So you can press this little tab on top, and now you can make sure that it's not going to fall off at all. So I can show you guys exactly how it's not falling off. I typically bring that softbox whenever I need to travel because it's nice and portable. But at the photo shoot that we did with Dabani, it was a very small location, so it was perfect because it's a very small yet strong portable setup. So it was perfect for the location. Now that you guys know the gear that I used for this photo shoot, I did want to jump into Lightroom and show you guys the photos there. But before I do that, I did want to explain that I probably won't go over the editing in this video because it usually makes these videos a little too long. So I'll do my best to make sure that you guys get as much information about the thought process involved with lighting, composition, and posting. I feel like those things are probably more important than editing, but of course I'll make maybe a separate video on editing if you guys are interested in seeing that. So what you're seeing on the screen right now is the very first photo that I took at this photo shoot that wasn't just a photo of her bag there. So this is the very first photo that I took of Dabani, and you'll notice that it's very underexposed. If I did really want to edit this photo, it felt like the pose or something was really amazing. I could actually adjust the exposure, which I do want to show you guys really quickly. So that's about, okay, that's a little too bright, is a good exposure here, maybe a little overexposed, but it's a pretty good exposure, but it's a lot of ambient, so it's not really making Dabani stand out. So usually with lighting, the reason why I like to use lighting to begin with is because I can adjust the background to be different kind of exposure. So I do have the exposure set like this for this image, but I did feel like it was a little too dark. So you'll notice that my settings are ISO 50 at f1.2 at 1/200th of a second, but I did feel like maybe the ambient was a little too dark. I wanted to add a little bit more of the ambient, so I did adjust my settings to be one stop brighter in terms of the shutter speed. As I took this next shot of Dabani and maybe the next one after that, I did tell her to not worry about the posing because I was still adjusting my flash exposure, but she did a great job with the posing. So if I really wanted to edit this photo because I felt like the pose was good, then I can do so. Another thing that I did was also raise the power of the strobe, the speed light actually. So I did raise it to, I think from 1/256th at the lowest to maybe 2 stops brighter to 1/64th. I think that was the exposure on here. And of course the photo is still a little bit underexposed. So then I took one more shot, and I believe it's this one right here. And I felt like it was a good exposure. And I want to say this one was taken at 132. When I got to this point, I thought, okay, I do like the ambient. I do like the flash power and the position of the flash, which was a little bit to the left and above. I'll show you guys quickly on the screen right now the behind the scenes photo so that you guys can see exactly where the light was positioned. But basically after I get to this point where I like all the settings and how the subject looks like in terms of flash output, then I go ahead and start to get into my groove and take a couple different photos. I'll be honest with you guys, the next maybe 4 to 5 photos that I'm about to show you, I'm not really super happy with how they look like, but I will go ahead and just show you guys exactly how they look like. So this is one shot here at the table. The reason why I don't really like the shot in general is because I feel like there's so much dark going over here in the corner. I feel like the hand is getting cut off from the table. I feel like it's too close to her body. So I did take these couple of photos with the intent to really like the images. But of course, sometimes there are times at photo shoots where you're taking photos and you don't want to tell the client that the photos don't look as great as you want it to be, but you still take them. So that was basically the next couple of photos that I took right now. This right here is the very next photo that I took, and I actually do kind of like this one, but I still feel like the table is in the way, so I didn't really love this image. With this shot here, I did make sure to tell her to separate her body from her arm, or actually the arm from her body. So you can see it's closer here, and then her arm is separated from her body, so you can see that little gap between her body and her arm. And one thing I do really like about this photo is the point of her fingers, and it's a very subtle difference. So you'll see in the last photo that it's a little bit more like curved to like a, I don't know, like an R, but then right here it feels like more of it's on its way to becoming like a K. It's a little bit more pointed. So it's small things like that that I always try to make sure to look for, because it can make a big difference in terms of the image and just the overall mood of the image. This very next shot is again one where I felt like it was pretty much the same, but I did make a small adjustment. In this previous photo, you can see that you can see more of the table because I was a little bit higher. So in the next photo, this one right here, you can see that it is a little bit less of the table because I went to a lower angle, but I still felt like it was in the way. With this photo here on the screen, it was pretty much the same image as well, but I felt like I wanted to see more kind of frontal position of her. So I believe in the last photos, she's a little bit more angled, and I told her in this photo here, maybe you can shift your body a little bit more to the front, and then I'll see how that looks like. And it is interesting, but I feel like it's still not great. And another thing you can see is that there is the softbox here on the top, so it's a good thing that I'm not really happy with this image, because otherwise it would have been very difficult to remove that. And this photo right here is the very last one from the photos that I'm not a big fan of. So you guys can see that she still has that kind of point with her finger. I really like that, so I made sure to tell her to keep that pose with the finger. And I do like how the tote bag looks like, but I feel like the pose is not the best and the composition is not the best. So in the very next couple of photos, you'll notice that I did go a little bit more in line with the couch, and I was a much bigger fan of these photos and this composition than the last couple of photos. One thing that you will notice about this photo though is I did change the settings just a little bit. I did allow a little bit more ambient light into the shot. So the last shot was at 1/100th of a second, and this shot is at 1/60th. I do believe for this shot, I did tell Ashley to move a little bit further away because she was a little too much into the shot. So I did have to raise the output of the flash. But before I did that, you can see that it was a little bit underexposed in this photo because of that little bit of extra distance. You lose some light with the distance. Another thing that I made sure to tell Dabani when I took this shot is that I feel like her arm was still too close to her body again. So to make sure to kind of separate it, and then that would be a little bit more flattering for her. And I also made sure to tell her that even though she wasn't slouching, it was a little bit like it was on its way to becoming a slouch kind of pose. So I made sure to tell her to maybe, arch her back, make it a little bit more straight, and also separate her hand from her body. And I also raised the output of the flash just a little bit more. So I think it was the next stop up, which is 1/16th, which resulted in this photo here. This photo is nice and I'm happy with it. But again, I really want to love an image. So I was trying to think, what do I not like about this photo? What kind of changes can I make? So I actually did take one more shot, which is pretty much the same exact thing, but just with the arm a little bit further away. And then I thought, you know what, maybe I feel like the hand is kind of not in line with the rest of the mood of the shot. So in the very next photo, this one right here, I honestly feel like the pose, even though it's very, very similar, just kind of having the wrist bent down and the fingers facing up, I feel like it makes a big difference. And also her kind of face was a little bit too low, like this in the last photo, in this very last photo. And even though it does look nice, I feel like this one right here is a stronger kind of pose in terms of the face and the fingers. But one thing that she did change a little bit was kind of lessening that gap between her arm and the body. So even though I feel like the pose and the expression is really great in here, I feel like it needs to kind of be a little bit separated from the body so that she looks a little bit more flattering in terms of how big or not she is. So in the very next photo, which you'll see right here, I did have her face a little bit more towards the table and arch her back a little bit and change the pose. And I ended up with this photo here, which I do like. The only thing that I was kind of worried about with this photo was I feel like the bag was a little too far from her. So that's why I asked her, do you want to show the label of the bag, or is that something that you don't really care? And she did want to eventually take a photo with it facing more towards the camera. So I made sure to make that adjustment. But another thing that I was seeing in this photo specifically was I felt like, even though it's a small thing, I felt like the leg right here, the left leg that's going towards the back or closer to the chair, I felt like it was a little hiding. So I made sure to kind of tell her in the next shot to maybe move her feet a little bit forward. And I think she went a little too far. So I'll show you guys that in this next image here. I feel like it's a little too far forward, but it's still better than the previous posing of the feet. And another difference in this photo is that in the last one, she was looking slightly away. And in this one, she's looking slightly towards the camera. And one thing that's going to be a big difference between those different poses is going to be, you can actually see that maybe the hair is kind of blocking this side of her face that's facing us. And it's kind of making her face seem smaller. So when she turns towards the camera like this, you can see that it kind of feels like the face is just slightly bigger, not big or anything, but just slightly bigger than the previous shot. So basically, even though they're very similar shots, there's a big difference in terms of how the face looks like. And this next shot here is just the behind the scenes that I showed you guys earlier. Initially, I was really happy with that shot that I just took, this last one right here, or not that one, but this one right here. So I thought, okay, take the behind the scenes and then maybe get a little bit closer and take some closer images. So that's what the next couple of photos are going to be. This is a shot with just her hand just against her face, and then it's a little bit more of a different angle, still with her hand towards her face. Another very similar shot to the last one right here. And then I had another thought to maybe make adjustments to that previous kind of setup for the shot where I'm more in line with the couch. So I took this next shot here and I want to see something happen with the settings, and maybe my finger slipped and I changed it to a higher output. So you get this image right here, but then immediately after this one, you finally get the image that I wanted to make this video about, which is this one right here. This shot is edited though a little bit in terms of color. So I do want to reset this image so you guys can see exactly how it looks like straight out of camera, which is what you're seeing on the screen right now. And then here's the edited version again. You can see that I did bump the exposure to 0.4. I did add a little bit of sharpening because I think the default is 40 and I changed it to 60. I didn't change the saturation or the hue for this image, but one thing I always do with my images is increase the saturation through the bottom section here, the calibration section. I always change the blue primary saturation slider up to 80 to 100. And I wanted to just show you guys a side-by-side comparison of the original shot by the couch that I really liked and the new version, the one that I really loved, because it is big differences and small differences at the same time. It's hard to explain, but you can see that her pose on the right side, I feel like the leg just extending a little bit closer, a little bit more out. It made a big difference. It has a little bit more of an interesting angle compared to the previous version. And another thing, like I mentioned earlier, is in the previous shot, she is having her face turned a little bit away from the camera, which makes her face a little bit more slimmer. But I feel like the mood of this next shot here, where she has a little bit more of her face towards the camera and a little bit up, just like those small little differences made a big difference in terms of the image on the right here. And then the last couple of things on the right image that I really liked more than the left image was, of course, the bag. The bag is now fixed facing forward. There's also not the light showing up in the back over here, which I could have removed with generative fill, but it's good to not have to do that. And the last thing is the fingers, how they're positioned. So in the left image, you can see that there's more of the palm showing, and on the right side, you can see that there's more of the finger showing and a little bit less of the palm. And I feel like this difference in the posing of the hands makes it a stronger image on the image on the right. The only thing that I would probably do in terms of Photoshop with the image on the right was just make the image a little bit softer in terms of the skin, maybe reduce the shine just a tiny bit. I'm probably going to use Evoto for that because I've been using that a lot lately for retouching because it's very quick and still yet excellent results. So I might use Evoto for the image on the right to do that, and also maybe use Photoshop to remove the table. But aside from that, I don't really need to do much to this image. And that's it for this video. I hope you guys learned from it. I hope you guys got a little bit tips and tricks here and there. And if you guys have any questions about the photo that I might have not addressed in this video, then let me know in the comments below and I'll reply as soon as possible, letting you know exactly how I did what you're wondering. Take care guys, and I'll see you in the very next video.